All right. George, we are using this for your video. All right. Hello, everyone. This session is another series of Azure top videos, and we are going to talk about security. Our goal is getting into security with Azure Functions and API management, but we found that there are some general topics that we can talk about security first. So today we have our Azure panel as well as Lana, our guest speaker. So I'll let Lana introduce herself first.
Hey guys, thank you. So my name is Lana Vyshnivetska, and I'm currently holding position of technical lead in Challenger. This is financial company in Sydney, Australia. And I spent my professional life building software applications of enterprise level. I have 20 plus years of software development experience and experienced in software development lifecycle, solution architecture, secure DevOps, cloud technologies, and people management. And as we all know, there is no simple answer for all challenges in IT with modern technologies, but I'm very keen to help business to grow and utilize the best. Cloud offer more flexibility and freedom these days, but it also creates a huge blind spot for IT and software security. So perhaps we will cover some basics today.
Perfect. Yeah, welcome, Lana. And we have Wagner, our Azure MVP in the community.
Hi,
and,
everyone.
Hey. And George, cloud advocate from Microsoft.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, Lana.
And myself, Nelly Sattari. I'm engineering manager at Atlassian and Azure MVP as well. So, Lana, I was thinking a few years ago, development was really simple, like in compared to these days. We didn't have much concern about security, DevOps, and all the things that we do today, compliance. We just easily wrote our code and build it and then deploy it to production. So these days is much more complex, and the developers are under a little bit of pressure because they should know lots of things about different aspects. How do you feel about it? And what is your observation on this?
Yeah, you're right, actually. And if you will think about history of computer science, you will find 40 years ago, there were no definition of cybersecurity and there were no a subject of cybersecurity. The practice of computer security was around physical premises and devices, governance, risk, and compliance, but not about software security. If you think about the 90s and beginning of 2000 years, the major focus on network and security of the network connections and protocols, right? Mm-hmm. And we remember the first major breach happened in 1986, if I'm not mistaken, with a internet gateway in Berkeley was attacked. And basically there we start thinking about security of applications rather than just security of networks and protocols. And yes, with the time it developed to cybersecurity practices and software application security. And eventually for the last few years, we can see such definition as a secure DevOps, where security integrated in every step of software development lifecycle. And yes, I would say it put enormous pressure on software engineers because before they were just developers coding and transforming requirements to their application, but now they have to be software engineers with some knowledge in security practices.
True, true. And I remember whenever I want to, like in my most of the jobs, whenever I wanted to come up with some innovative ideas, the first question was, what about the security part of it? Have you thought about it? So that's really sometimes a blocker for the developers if they don't know the concept. And more, we go further, I realize that it's so important for the developers to be across the whole security. Otherwise, all the suggestions and ideas would be, kind of overlooked because of the security aspects of that. And for this purpose, I know there is a concept of SecDevOps, which is more about shared responsibilities to make life easier for the developers and everyone. Could you talk about that a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. If I may share my screen, please.
Yeah.
I will explain integrated security in a DevOps and how it's aligned with a software development lifecycle.
Sure.
Share screen.
Yes, we can.
So perfect. On this picture, you can see how we can integrate security into our development lifecycle and in our DevOps process. Even before you start your project and you're talking to your stakeholders, you start thinking about threat model practices and policies you want to apply. So what potential loopholes in your applications from security perspective? So you do assessment even on feasibility phase. If you cannot do this yourself, just invite professionals like big consultancy companies who will help you on this journey. So you discuss this with your stakeholders, and you probably want to budget this upfront and reserve additional time for your project for these security practices. Then when your requirements ready, you go to code and after implementation of your code, you should include static and dynamic analysis in your basically a CI/CD pipeline where you can find security vulnerabilities upfront before they go even to staging or production environments. Code review from a security perspective also should be your normal practice. Then when you build your application, these days we encourage to bring penetration testing in the early stages. In traditional DevOps model and traditional security team practices, we have penetration testing at the very end of your project. And it might be too late because you already exhausted your resources and you're close to your timeline, and now you start talking to your stakeholders, trying to compromise and what to fix and what to leave in the future, and you might leave technical debt behind your back. So do penetration testing when you go on staging. It will help you to find major vulnerabilities and fix them because you have time and resources to do so. Then you test your application, release it, and when you deploy your application, it's very important to think about your logs and audit. And regardless if it's a cloud application or on-prem application, regardless what type of functions you're using, are they serverless or not, you have to think about your log aggregation and audit which you can make based on these data. And when your application is live and sound and in the air, people using these, you still do your threat intelligence and keep monitoring. And you should detect your vulnerabilities on this stage as well and have a proper response. For example, we know how our incidents response procedure work. And then keep monitor your application. And when your new project starts, you basically repeat the same cycle.
Right. That was the best diagram around security. So looking at that diagram, it starts from planning up to releasing to the production. Developers take different responsibilities in this cycle, in this infinity cycle. And one of the things is the build time. Let's take the planning aside. Starting from the build, what do you think is more important for the developers to know about security and to consider about having a secure applications in the build kind of phase?
Yeah, sure. When we're talking about cloud applications, and especially if we're talking about serverless applications like Azure Functions, we need to understand where our responsibilities are, because cloud provider has responsibilities about physical security and host infrastructure and operating system application servers, right? But you as a cloud customer has your own responsibilities when it comes to the application logic or your client endpoints like APIM and your data. And what you share between yourself and cloud is a network controls and identity and access management. So as application developer, you can see there is a plenty of things you have to be responsible of, right? And I would start with identity and access management, because I cannot imagine modern application these days which doesn't have this component.
Fair enough. Yeah. And by that, what components are you going to consider? I mean, OpenID or what kind of protocols, what kind of components?
Definitely. We have an industry standard here, which is author to authorization framework. And it's probably like, regardless who will be your vendor and who will implement this for you, it's industry standard protocol and framework which provides application authorization flow.
Okay.
And also we have OpenID, which is also another layer on top of this protocol, and it allows client to verify identity of the end users, and basically it performs by your authorization server. Again, it is agnostic, and it doesn't matter who will be your vendor or if you implement these in-house. If you will stick to these protocols, then that's your definitely baseline as a first step. So you will be protecting your critical web applications. And when it comes to the API management, you will configure these inside your virtual networks in internal mode, but you still need to provide your endpoint security using these protocols.
Can I get you please to bring that diagram one more time for us?
Sure. Yep, we're here.
All right. So that is an interesting diagram because from the planning phase to the release, I think all the, like phases can be covered by Azure Cloud with different, applications and tools that we basically have and consider of using them. So can you just walk us a little bit more on different phases and see for each phase how we can use these tools and cloud provider facilities? And other than that, I was thinking of how we can make sure that this threat model is kind of collaboration model instead of fear-driven model for us. Like all the developers used to think about this, security as a burden because they didn't know how to manage this much securities, but these segregations of duties and this, different ways that other people can help and protect the development teams, from the security threats can be really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. When you look at this diagram and you start with your plan, there is a threat model policies you need to define, and you can start small and define these policies on your project level, especially if you just starting to implement your company security posture, or you can introduce these on enterprise level for the whole company software engineers. It depends on the size of your business, and it depends on your approach to do this. But definitely, threat modeling is a structured approach to identify and prioritize threats to your system. Let's talk about in scope of one project. So you can have a cheat sheet which will tick all your boxes where you want to improve your security, or what kind of security controls you want to include in your software. And you don't need to be a software expert to implement these techniques covered in this cheat sheet, right? Security team will be a great help for you to work together as a team to identify your pain points and where your potential attacks might be. So they will help you to define a service of attacks, potential service of attacks, and then you as a solution architect or software engineer will work with them as a team to see what security controls you can bring in your project to mitigate this. So, for example, how data flowing through your system to define where system can be attacked. And then if you will find do you encrypt your data or not, and if you apply encryption on your database level, or if you pass in data from one location to another, it's also like possible to analyze upfront. And you should document as many potential threats to the system as possible. Basically, start thinking as a hacker where you can try and probe your APIs or endpoints or even your data. And you should document the security controls you want to apply and put in place to reduce the risk of being breached. So
just sharing one experience. So the security team sometimes ago, they used to just ask questions that kind of, like just auditing the applications to say, okay, what kind of security controllers do you have in place? But these days it's a bit different. The security team and the dev team are collaborating pretty much, like really in a close relationship, and they advise the development teams how to manage your security, and it's kind of like working together to solve the problem. What is kind of examples that you think of in your experience that security team came to help? What tools they offered you, considering this diagram, where they actually act in these shared responsibilities?
Look, basically, let me say this: you don't need to invent a wheel, because it's already a methodology here, and it's literally called a threat modeling methodology, and it has its own terminology and it has its own process, and it's basically has your run sheet with the tick boxes you can tick, and then once you do this, you will go to the vendor selections or tool selections. Again, it's up to your company how much you want to, tools you want to use, and what kind of vendors you want to use, and go through this due diligence process where you select a right product for you. Because every security like engineer and every security team member, they have their own predefined tools which they used in the past and during their career. But again, it's not necessarily will be the best choice for your project or for your company. So if we start with basically methodology, you have threat modeling procedure where you define your threat agents, where you define the impact, where you measure potential damage in case if you will be breached or you have a particular threat. And you define and measure likelihood, so possibility this breach will be carried out, and a variety of factors which basically can impact the likelihood of this threat being carried out. And then you go to security controls, and they are your safeguards and a countermeasure which you put in place. And here you basically select what tools you will be using, right? And you can have an advice and work with security team, again, through the due diligence process. For example, for static code analysis, you have numerous vendors you can choose from. For dynamic scan or hybrid scan, you can choose, again, number of tools you can apply, or it might be one vendor with one tool which covers everything. And also preventions, controls, which help you to stop this and prevent this particular attack from being possible. And when you talk about preventions, you have to think about your not only technical controls, but administrative controls as well. So there is a difference. With the technical controls, you put in place your JSON web tokens, your certificates, how you design your cloud or hybrid. Are you using your virtual networks and subnets? But there is administrative control you also can put in place. For example, as been mentioned, segregation of duties. That's your administrative control. And you're also working not only with security team, but with your stakeholders as well. Because if your stakeholders will not understand what you want to achieve, and you do not explain them in a simple basis how security important and how it will succeed the business, you very unlikely have a budget to move your tools and pay for them. So it's more than just a security team and developers working together. It's a bigger picture we need to think about. And as a part of these threat model policies and process, it's a mitigations. They are controls which you put in place to like mitigate your threat or basically eliminate the possibility of these. For example, how you store and keep your passwords in a database, how you hash them, and how you pass data from the front end to back end. Do you basically mask them, and what kind of masking you apply so nothing, no personal identifiable data or like critical sensitive data will be shown in the front end when someone just can explore the browser backend and see the whole payload as an open text, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Especially, I want to refer back to your point about reinventing the wheel. We don't need to do that. So with this model, how do you think the cloud providers, let's say Azure and Microsoft Azure, can come and help with each step? Like, for example, you talked about the key values and, like making the secrets secure, or monitoring, or different steps that how those providers can help with these segregations of duty, and they actually be part of this development team other than the security team, development team. And now we have the cloud providers like Microsoft Azure part of this basically diagram, right?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, there is a difference between responsibilities, shared responsibilities between cloud provider and our customers, like cloud customers. So cloud provider definitely can help with the technical controls in place, with the physical security and infrastructure. And for example, uploading certificates in APIM and like building your virtual networks and subnets in your cloud as a part of your cloud implementation will help you to basically separate calls from internal clients inside the organization and into external clients who's coming to your system from the UI and web applications and your external endpoints if you want to share them with your third-party partners. So yeah, that's kind of controls here in place.
As well as CI/CDs, key values, all these components in the cloud that you can basically improve your security.
That's right. That's right. But it's more coming to more granular technical controls on your, let's say, code. Now we move into the next stage, which is implementation and a code. You not only need to write your application logic, but you need to think how you protect your secrets and your valuables into your code, because we know every web application, every API or microservice requires some set of secrets, like subscriptions, API keys, and maybe some client IDs or maybe some client connection. Like secret can be anything, even connection to the your configuration, even connection to the database can be a secret. So here, your cloud provider will give you an ability to keep your secrets safe, for example, using Azure Key Vault. And there are similar products in different cloud providers. You basically either using these Key Vault APIs to put your secrets and read your secrets, or you integrating with your Azure Key Vault in your Azure resource management templates, where you are consuming and referring to your Key Vault by Key Vault ID and reading your secrets from here. So all of these controls should be in place in your implementation phase.
Lana.
And Lana, one question on that one, but just tying that back with your threat model was at the threat model part of the planning part, you identify there is a requirement to protect your secrets when you moving boundaries or things like that, right? So you know that have that requirement. And then now that you are in the code phase, you go and find from the cloud provider that you selected as part of your due diligence, what is the best options on how to do that. So it's almost like requirements and implementation of the requirements. The thread model becomes just another set of requirements on your
That's
project.
right.
What we used to call the non-functional requirements, but they are much more prominent now.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
then based on what Nelly was saying, is the way that the cloud providers help us is giving more and better tools
A tool,
to do
yes,
that.
exactly. But you should define your trust boundaries in your threat model policies in the first place before you start your project, or on a phase when you plan your project, and perhaps when you do solution design. That's exactly right. And this trust boundary is also another part of this threat model methodology, basically, of course.
Perfect.
yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, I agree with that. And there's one common question that people ask you when you say that is a chicken and egg situation there. You now have a safe where you put all your keys, but now you need a key for the safe. Okay, what's coming first? Then, then that's where the cloud providers also help with this master key, this key that's going to open the safe. There's like manage identities or things like that.
Exactly.
That's why I have to look. Yeah.
Yeah, but it depends again how you build. It's a bigger question, actually. I don't think we can answer these in this particular short session because it comes to your Azure, let's say, architecture, how you basically build your architecture on your side when you decided to go to the cloud, right? And then it comes to managed identities or Azure ID integration, and it depends on what identity your key vault will be working. For example, from my personal experience, we do this under managed identities. And then it might come down to the resource group, and it's really big topic, I would say,
maybe we should
because it's really big topic because it is Azure architecture, how you build this on your side.
Maybe we
And
can include it
yeah,
as part of those tokens and identity management session, talking about more details.
might be later.
And just on that one is the cloud provider is also improving or moving, because if you're talking about that a year or a year and a half ago, you wouldn't be talking about managed identities. So because of that, the best option to do that was some kind of master key to deal with that. Now we seeing the need to improve that, and it's bringing some of the things that we had on-prem now to the cloud. So that's why becomes that infinite loop that you show, because every time that you go through that process again, you see what is the best of breed at that point in time, adopt and adjust on the next part of the loop.
Yeah, that's right. Very good point. Because I remember my cloud experience 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago when I first implemented this security management. And I went through the 4 or 5 vendors where I tried to do the comprehensive metrics through my due diligence process when I selected the best one. And I do remember how painful it was to basically put them into your software development process, because you have to configure connection to this key vault, basically, to push your keys and take it from them. And now these days with the managed identities in Azure, it's much more straightforward process. And the beauty is you can basically include this in your resource management template. And because it's everything inside your Azure architecture and inside your Azure, let's say, your own implementation of Azure, you have better control around who will be accessing what kind of applications, and
And seeing that need for security, it bringing closer and closer to the control plane. Because before, as you said, it's like I have to do that through a script. I have to do that. It was always hidden, and I couldn't retrofit it back. If I had a old process of 2 years ago, I could not just retrofit it and apply the new technology, because there is nothing on the control plane for you to use. Today, if you think about it, you have the ability to bring certificates directly from Key Vault on API management.
Yeah.
You have the ability to turn on MSI or manage identity, even if your system is already running and starting to get the use of that. So they're improving that not just for new projects, but also projects that are already live.
It will make your maintenance much simple.
Do you think, Lana, that the developers, they have to know that that exists, because they normally don't know all those things that we're talking about?
Sure.
Like, they don't have to understand the whole thing, but at least they have to know that, you know, maybe the operation is going to do that for them. Let's say, don't worry about, you know, the key to open the safe. We're going to do that for you. We're going to magically inject that key there and everything's going to work. How, you know, we translate that for the developer?
Yes and no. Like, again, based on my personal experience, like a people management and a software development manager for last 5 years, I would say there are different types of software engineers, basically, and you cannot expect they all on the same level, because when you build your team, actually, you bring different level of professionals here, and it might be junior developers who just starting the joining. It might be solid mid-level developer who are just happy to make a book, and if there is someone really passionate and wanting to grow as a professional. So basically, it depends on the level where your software engineers are and what the level of knowledge and understanding they have. You cannot have a team of like currently I manage 8 professionals, and you cannot have 8 of them to be super senior guys who knows everything, who understands everything. So it depends. Again, it depends on their skills, experience, knowledge, and basically the work they do. Because not all people need to know about this. And yes, you have to have some people in your team who absolutely know how it works, from the implementation till the maintenance, where they will be able to build resource management template from the scratch, knowing how they need to talk to Key Vault, and maybe even how infrastructure guys or DevOps guys configure this for you, because they are super senior software engineers. But on the same time, you can have junior developers who are just happy to do the work and learn on the fly. So there is no simple answer for this, right? But yeah, you aim to bring your people up, and you aim to train them to the level when they one day will replace you, when you will decide to move forward.
Yeah, I think
in your career.
This kind of decision makings are more sitting with the architecture and the, you know, like senior people in the team. But still, most of them, like some of them, they don't know the available features in the cloud to use them. So
the question,
I think what George also is emphasizing, that maybe just, you know, let them know what is available, just solve a lot of problems instead of doing everything from the scratch.
The question is they need to know, because what will be the point to have your infrastructure and architecture team? That basically we separate roles in our like IT by professional to get the most of them. So they will be effectively building the area where they're responsible for. So yeah, you cannot have like all the people know exactly the same things, otherwise you will be inefficient.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
and that's also where your process that you have there is gets in place, right? So at the threat model time, you actually identify those risks, and you're saying that the way to mitigate it is that. But at the code review time, you're making sure that this is in place, not that it's like a slap on the wrist of the developer, but as a way to help them to say, hey, use that and it works, but it's give you like all of this overhead. If you use that technique here, then it's going to make your life easier, and it's going to be more seamless to the next time. So at that point, the like threat models exercise, code review exercise, penetration test exercise should be teachable moments for the whole team, instead of like just gates and just a way to, again, put security against developers. That is never the intention. So
that's
working
right.
of all of that as a part of a way for us to teach each other and learn what is new and what is out there, then you should be able to get that culture improved over time.
Yeah, but regardless, you need to have people who's making decision and who are in charge, because the decision being made for the project might impact you in the future when it comes to the cost or future development or maintenance or integration. So I believe we just need people who's making right decision in the right time, rather than give developers an overview, this will be implemented or this should be implemented. Because as we know, we're all curious, and as software engineers, we also want to try new things. It's okay for the startup, but when it comes to the compliance company or financial or big well-established company, it might be risky. So you need to have right people making right decision on the right period of time.
And having that documented so we can all follow the same sheet.
Yes. Yes. When it comes to threat modeling policies, that's about right.
All right.
Hey, Lana.
Go ahead, sorry.
And I have a question for you. Talking about architecture, we just said that a few minutes ago. What do you think about security by design in first stages of the project? Do you think we know that cloud is now a trend? It's becoming a reality in the near future. But in terms, I think developers could leverage that idea to put inside a project or in the first stage of the project, security by design. So if they think that maybe in the future, perhaps they don't have problem in escalating, stuff like that. What do you think? Do you have any thought about that?
Yeah, definitely. I tend to agree, and I would agree with the concept security by design is the first place. So yes, I think it's a good approach, and it's a good way to go further with software development, because you always have components which must be considered for every project, regardless how big this project or what you do here. So yes, like, not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Yeah, because if you think in a very changing environment, you can just start with a good architecture that you can scale out or up. You know.
Yeah, at least build your baseline with the main components, which always should be in place for every project, regardless.
Thanks, Lana.
Right.
That was very nice.
No problem. Thank you guys for your help. It's good to have audience who can be like providing some feedback and put you on the track.
I hate talking to myself as well. That's why I always invite someone, and that's how that started. You know, as I started, I invited Fernando and other people just to chat and talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. It was good. Congrats. Yeah.
Thank
you guys.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye, guys. Bye.